And we are
Hi.
on. Hey,
Hi,
good
Rick.
morning, good afternoon, good
And
evening.
hi, Paul.
Yes,
Hi,
Paul.
Welcome.
Rick. Hi, Fati.
Yes, we have Paul in the room today, and uh, I'm really thrilled to get to know Paul a lot more. Um, Fati, I know you so well.
Well, are you saying you don't care about me?
No, absolutely not.
You needed more excitement in the conversations with me? Is that what's going on?
No, actually, you. Um, I don't know how it all happened, but you found Paul and you directed Paul to me, kind of a thing.
Well, Paul is a fellow New Yorker.
Yes.
Yes. Finally, I feel very alone sometimes in the world of Zoom from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually happen to know Paul personally. And that's how, I thought of him. I know what he does. And,
Yeah.
I'm going to let him speak to that because I would
Yeah.
probably butcher it all. But I thought it would be the perfect fit for our show to talk about something that we advocate for all the time, but that we never really spoke to, in our shows, like specifically. So, I was thinking about, talking about meditation, the importance of meditation. We always talked about stuff like this, but we never had someone that leads embraces it and like teaches it. So
Yeah.
I thought of
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. No, that's great.
So
And so Paul, why don't you just tell us in your words what you'd like to share with everybody here?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. Really excited for this conversation. And so, my name is Paul Weinfield. I think of myself first as a musician, both because I make music. I'm a singer and multi instrumentalist and songwriter, but also because I think of the more spiritual or meditative work that I do as very connected to music. Um, I think of meditation as really the art of being in tune, being in tune with what's happening, right?
Mhm.
And so harmony is really something that's important to me on both an artistic front and also a spiritual front. So practically, I make records, I perform. I also am the guiding teacher at something called Downtown Meditation, which used to physically be in the East Village in Manhattan in New York City, but since the pandemic has been online. So we're a 20-year-old community of people who practice Theravada Buddhist meditation. So I'm the guiding teacher there right now, and I do other things as well. I'm a life coach. I work one-on-one with people a lot, and I'm also an author.
Wow. It's a term that I came across, multi-potentialite.
I love it.
And it's not a derogatory term. It's just that, you're in great company because it includes people like Da Vinci, you
Right.
know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and where there's multi-dimensional pieces of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But just in what you just said about, even using music as a metaphor, you talked about being in tune and in harmony, and those are all, great terms when we talk about the busy world that's going on and how we see it not in harmony, or
Right.
when we're not in harmony and how that feels.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Da Vinci because I think sometimes we live in a world that really kind of forces us or puts a lot of pressure on us to really specialize and like be one thing. And
Mm,
I think, what a lot of people have always known is that to really understand this life, you have to kind of look at it from a bunch of different angles. So, on my best days, I can kind of see it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing a bunch of different things that all give me a window into what it means to be a human. On my worst days, I sort of think of myself as, oh, too many irons in the fire, or jack of all trades and master of none. But I think it's important to look at life from different angles. You see things differently that way.
mhm.
And I agree with what you're saying about, about society and the world we live in being somewhat out of tune right now. I'm curious, how did you take it to mean that?
Well, for me, and I can only speak from my experiences, is I've always sort of took it towards the feelings, like the rubs. Like when I feel disharmony, it has a type of feeling to it. Like
Mhm.
there's a there's a disconnect. And when I'm in harmony or in sync with the vibration, then there's a flow and easiness to things.
Yeah, yeah. Totally.
And just recently, my background is in paramedicine. I was a paramedic for 30 years, and I just watched prior to listening to your music, a short documentary on the crises that is going on in the frontline services out there,
Mhm.
and how what's happening is so disconnected to what the real source of the issues are,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And we're seeing the results of that. So when I look at where there's things are not aligned, to me they show up as results. They show up. You can see that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's, and yet when there's flow, that tends to disappear, and you see the health and the resilience in the system, as
Yeah.
opposed as opposed to where you feel that there's cancer or whatever, some things are breaking down.
Mm.
If that makes any particular.
It does. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Well, to me, that this harmony that you're speaking to is just a reflection of what's happening in each individual person,
Mm.
right? That forms that society, right? So the solution to any, like the way to harmonize anything is really truly to go within
Mhm.
you,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
Which kind of speaks loudly to the importance of meditation in this case, right? Because that's a tool, right? It's a tool to kind of build and nurture the relationship with yourself,
Yeah.
right? To give yourself the space to think, to give yourself the perspective that you
Yeah.
wouldn't otherwise get.
Yeah. Totally.
So
Yeah. Yeah. If we're at odds with ourselves, it's very difficult. It's probably impossible to really be in harmony with other people. Yeah.
Mhm. I see. Thanks, Don. Don
hello, Don.
gave a comment
Welcome
right
back.
away about it's funny how feelings are always with us, but we have to make effort to notice those feelings and where they are in the body and what that means to us. A great,
hmm
great comment.
I think it's in the noticing that the trick is, right? Because it's not that the feelings are not showing up. He's right. They're always there. We
Yeah.
just are not paying attention sometimes, right? And we get trapped into the reaction, right? We react to things and we don't even realize what we're reacting to. But the feelings are always there. They're always there to tell us that something is not in harmony, something doesn't fit us, or something feels not aligned, right? But we often miss it because we're not being present, right? And that's, again, I think, when you sit in meditation, you sit with yourself, however you do it. You could even just walk and go on a hike. You don't have to necessarily sit on a pillow and do that. But when you give yourself that time, then that's when you start noticing all these different things. You
Mm.
start connecting with it. You start really understanding the message behind those signals, those feelings, right? Because that's what feelings really are. They're just signaling something.
Yeah. 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 Mm.
We kind of disconnected there for a bit. I don't know if you saw that or whether it
Did
was
it
on my end
disconnect?
or
No.
okay.
I don't know.
I might be on. I might have hit my. I tend to disappear
Are
with
you trying
fatigue.
to disappear again?
No, I'm not. But I might Okay, I seem to be plugged back in.
So,
I'm curious, Paul. Fati points to a really key element that I feel is important in this piece about noticing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
want to comment about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to notice what's happening inside because we tend to be so our awareness tends to flow out so much, into the news or into our relationships or into our thoughts, which is kind of out of the body experience in the same way. So it's hard to really notice what's here because we're always going out, going out, going out.
Hmm.
And I think that we have to kind of remember that what we're looking for is inside. Um, I have to remind myself that all the time. I mean, I was raised in a very sort of academic, intellectual family, and so it was always about, you know, how far your mind could go into books and thoughts and whatever. And I always thought that was the way. And there's a lot of value in, you know, in study and all that. But really, like, when it comes to understanding our human experience, I think we have to kind of go inside. There's a great story from the Pali Canon of this magical creature called a skywalker who can travel like huge distances with one stride. And he tries to find the end of the cosmos, and he goes and goes and goes, and he still can't find where it all ends. Really, he's looking for where does it all start? Like, where does it all come from? And he goes to the Buddha and he says, you know, I've been just going and going to the edges and edges of the cosmos, but I haven't found the place where it all starts. And Buddha basically says, you went in the wrong direction. You know, you have to go inside. Everything you need to know is in this fathom long body. And that becomes kind of like a phrase for, you know, remembering that when you're dealing with an issue that's emotional, or you're dealing with any kind of issues, that rather than go out looking for the solution, to take a moment to go inside this fathom long body and to really feel, you know, where you're feeling things in the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that. And like, I would add to that, right? Rather than going on the outside or using your intellect to solve the problem, right? Just kind of stopping that for a moment to just be, right?
Yeah.
So
I think I just wanted to point out that, like, I think I'm not 100% sure, and this is my opinion, but when you say, you know, like, go to our intellect, I almost get the impression sometimes that that's what people think is their inner pointing, is going to their intellect.
what they know, yeah.
What they know.
What they know with this, yeah.
Exactly. And there's this void of unknownness behind the, like, separate, or, you know, it's all part of one mind, but the what's the fear behind that? Like, what, like we keep talking about go inside. Like, you can read about it all over the place. Go inside, go inside. There's no secret to pointing yourself in that direction, but we don't, or we're reluctant to. I'm curious.
Well, I mean, I think part of that is conditioning, right? We're just conditioned to solve problems by analyzing them and trying to control them, right? And the other problem, I think, something that probably Paul could speak to a little bit better than I would, I think a lot of people have a hard time sitting with themselves and getting their mind to sit still, or the, you know, like, and I would like to actually to go into that a little bit. Like, do we just like not think? Is that even possible, to not have any thoughts? Do we just make peace with them? Like, I'd be curious to hear, you know, because I think that is part of the challenge for a lot of people in terms of their relationship with meditation. They get really frustrated, right? So they get even more in their left brain because now they're analyzing why all these thoughts are still coming, and they're judging themselves, and they're getting charged up. You know, they're doing the opposite of what meditation should be doing for you, right? Which is like quieting down the thinking and like getting you more in touch with yourself. Now the focus goes more onto the way you're doing it and why it's not working, and right, getting busy.
Yeah.
In a busyness in this case.
Yeah. And of course, that's all just what's happening. That's all what we want to notice in meditation, right? Is the self-judgment, the self-doubt, all that kind of stuff. And I think people have this idea that if they just sit in a meditation posture, they're just going to like just blast off into some, you know, beautiful state. And so they think they're doing it wrong when they're noticing, you know, that thought is arising, because that's what happens when the mind thinks, right? But my teacher used to always say, like, we don't put that in the brochure, right? Because, you know, people think the present moment is going to be this blissful place, and it's not always a blissful place, but it is the only place that we can really understand what's happening. So I think people have the wrong idea about meditation. They think it's going to be this place that's free from thought. They think it's going to always be physically pleasant. They think it's going to sort of solve all their problems. And what we see when we come to the present moment is we see what's real. We see what's there, you know, which is often a lot of self-judgment, a lot of self-doubt, you know, a lot of distraction, a lot of anxiety, right? And that stuff usually sits on top of deeper things that we don't really want to look at. Sometimes a lot of sadness comes up when you get present. Sometimes a lot of anger can come up when you get present. And, so it takes a strong mind to say, you know what, I'm just going to look at what I've been sweeping under the rug, all these years. I'm just going to sit here and just look at it. And, but something really marvelous happens when we do that, when we have the courage to do that.
Absolutely, I love that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we expect that we master this, like stilling your mind, that then we're going to find bliss. And truthfully, what we're going to be faced with is what you're speaking to, all the things that we do need to look at, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like meditation is a place for you to think on a deeper level, to think more in terms of doing that inner thinking and looking at all those things that, they may not be pleasant, right? All those things that you might be blindsided to, or that you may be, the knowing may be there, but you're just not paying attention to it.
Right.
And in my experience, that's something that comes and goes depending on what's happening in your life, right? That's something that comes and goes. You're going to have moments where you have resolved a lot of that stuff, where you have, some sort of resolve or peace already within your life, right? So those meditations are going to look a little different. And then there are going to be things that are going to challenge you. They're going to come up, or a new piece of awareness that's there that just wants to be resolved, right? Yeah. So to me, it's a place to do the inner work, right? Totally. To do the inner work.
And I think, Rick, just to answer your question, I mean, there are many ways of answering. It's not like this is the answer, but the thing that scares us above all about going inside is because we don't know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And it's like the intellect is a great place of telling yourself that you know what is going to happen. It's like, I know that guy, he's a bad guy, and then when you're in a meditation, you think about that guy and it's like you have all these different feelings. I have some love for him, or I feel jealous of him, whatever. You don't know what's going to happen, right, when you actually get present. And so the intellect is a place where we can kind of give ourselves the illusion that we know what's happening, or we know what's going to happen. It's hard for people to get away from that and move into a place of not knowing.
I agree, and I love the term that you used, the illusionary. Right? Yeah. Jen made a comment about, I wonder if expectations can...
Hi, Jen. I actually know Jen. Good to see you here. I met her at the Super Coach event. Welcome. Sorry, God, I just realized that.
So she was saying, about expectations can hinder the process. So going into meditation, I can see where she's talking about is sort of like there's an expectation that there's going to be a certain outcome.
Yeah.
Is it true?
Do you want to speak to that?
Well, in my experience, when I drop the expectations, that's when the miracles happen. Like if I'm expecting, and I teach that with clients, when particularly I call it dropping the agenda. When you're going into a boardroom or anything like that, you drop the agenda, you drop any biases, you drop any experiences of what you've had past. Bringing that into a boardroom can have consequences, right? Because now you are acting accordingly. I think that plays a little bit in any kind of discipline. So if I move into meditation and if I'm expecting a result, I might be disappointed and then go, this stuff doesn't work, and then brush it off.
Yeah. I think it's useful to have a distinction between an expectation and an intention.
Okay. That's a good one.
Because I think that in meditation, it's helpful to have a reason for being there in the first place. Otherwise, it's just sort of like, well, I don't know why I'm here, but I guess I'll try it, and sometimes an intention can be as simple as like, I want to take this time to show up with love for myself, or I want to take this time to quiet my mind. It can be very general and it can be very simple. I think that's healthy. I think having an expectation that it's going to, I'm going to let go of my feelings for my ex, or I'm going to have a great insight, that can really get in the way of really just being present and stepping into that unknown place that we've been talking about.
I mean, there's different types of meditation, right? I almost think there should be different names for it,
Mhm.
right? Because what you're speaking to is really that like becoming the observer, like sitting in silence and like observing your thoughts without judgment, without really getting, upset or resentful that you can't still your mind some days, right? That is different than like active meditation, right? Where you're sitting and you're visualizing things. I mean, I do a lot of forgiveness, for instance, during my meditation practice, right? And my meditation practice includes different things, right? That are not necessarily just sitting with my thoughts or like trying to quiet my mind. So I kind of need both, right? Some days I feel like I need more that quiet and still space where I can just be and like connect with my intuition, we want to call it that, or the thoughts that come in, or the knowing, or the messages that come in that moment. And sometimes I just really need to let go of things, right? But I started with that intention, right? The intention is to work through some of these feelings that I have. And then, of course, there's things that you can do outside of meditation to move those feelings, right? But I think especially with something like forgiveness, it's a good moment to do it because you're more open to it in that setting,
Yeah.
right? So I almost feel like there should be different labels
Yeah.
for meditation because there's so many different forms of it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, the type that you were trained in, that you're teaching people. Can you just speak to that a little bit and tell us? Well, first of all, tell us how you got in to become a meditation
Yeah.
teacher.
It's a
Yeah.
long story, but I'll try to keep it short. It's so I had a difficult childhood, as many of us did, and I was working in a used bookstore when I was 14 years old, and the guy I was working with was a really bad alcoholic. He would show up really, really drunk all the time, and I would have to cover for him. But the one thing that he really gave to me, which is a gift that I will always be grateful to him for, is that he got me into reading books about Zen. He was really
Oh.
interested in Zen Buddhism, and he would always, before he would like pass out in the back, he would give me a new book on Zen. So I started reading these books, and they really resonated. And I tried practicing on my own as a teenager, didn't get very far, and then I had this idea, well, I need to go to India and find a guru. So I did that eventually. Went all around India, didn't find a guru.
Oh no.
And I met a lot of gurus, but none really were the person I wanted to work with. Came back, it's kind of a classic story. Came back to New York City and like met my teacher right away. A New Yorker.
Of course.
So that's about 24, 25 when I met him, and he was practicing what's usually called insight meditation, which is basically Theravada Buddhist meditation, sort of adapted in the West. At that time, that's what he was teaching. And I just knew that he had something that I wanted. He had gone through so much pain and struggle, and you could just see in him that he had found a way out. He had found relief from his suffering, and so I just wanted what he had, and I started studying with him and got to be very close with him. And then about, I guess, 6 or 7 years into studying with him, he said, I want to make you a teacher. And he really put me through the paces. It wasn't like, oh, here's your certificate, go teach. It was like I taught under him and worked very closely with him for like 10 years after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then in 2018, he said, I want to leave this community that I've started, and I want you to take over along with another teacher. And so then that was like a whole new deep end to be thrown into, in terms of not just teaching, but, really kind of like being a presence in people's lives and being a community leader. And so that was, yeah. So, and over time, his teaching has shifted, as mine has, to something called the Thai forest tradition. So really simply what that means is a lot of the meditation we do is about breath. That's the most important part. But there's a lot of emphasis on figuring things out for yourself. The Thai forest ajahns left the sort of normal monastic life, and they went off into the wilderness, into the jungle, and they had to learn things for themselves. And so there's like a whole real reliance on ingenuity and asking questions and not leaning on preconceived ideas of how to solve problems in your mind. So that's that, and it's been really a tradition that's I've found very supportive over the years. It really resonates with me.
That's really cool. I like that. That's a great story. It's like the hero's journey, isn't it?
Right, right. Totally, totally,
Or
totally.
the alchemist story, right? It's like here we are back home again.
Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah,
Yeah, so classic. Oh, thanks for sharing that.
yeah, yeah.
I I I'm curious because I know I have a few friends that point to living in a meditated state, not in a medicated state, but in a meditation state.
Right.
We
You got to
have
be
that
careful.
too.
Uh, I just love the term you said, a bad drunk. I don't know if there's any really good ones, but anyway, but I find myself, and this is through many years of my own practice, that I, I, although I have done sort of like, okay, I'm just going to go in my bedroom now and just kind of, you know, do that. But in the midst of chaos, to be able to find myself in that state,
Mhm.
and and I know in paramedicine we talk about, or even in sports we talk about being in the zone or being in flow, being in
Yeah,
harmony with what is actually happening.
right, right.
Um, and it's a term that, an experience that you can have within and amongst chaos.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. A lot of times people say, how can you be a meditation teacher in New York City? And, I
We
always say,
don't know.
yeah, it's the perfect place to practice, right? We got sirens, we got
We
great.
needed more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
so many things that would distract you,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And of course, what the Buddha really taught was just that the things that distract us outside really distract us because of what's going on inside,
Mm.
right? If we really understand our inner experience, then we're not pulled away by other things, because we see that there's something better. There's a happiness on the inside. We don't have to be distracted. you know
Very cool message. And if
yeah,
anybody has any
Everything seems to be doing this as
yeah,
usual.
exactly.
Whenever
Yeah,
you're doing that, whatever we're talking about
totally,
self-development,
totally.
right? Like making changes in your life, or evolving, or whatever it is, like
Yeah,
it always points inwards, and that's what kind of what meditation does, right? It all points you in the same direction.
yeah, 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 totally. Yeah, yeah. And you can change your mind, and that's something I think a lot of people deep down inside um, fear they can't do. It's like, well, I'm always going to be like this, so let me try to change other people or whatever. And so I think one of the beautiful things that can happen when people meditate is they're like, whoa, I can actually change my mind. I don't have to have this cluttered and anxious, right, and chaotic mind.
Yeah, yeah. And my one thing that switched with me, made a significant difference, is understanding the nature of thought and how it flows,
Mhm.
and that I don't have to act on every one of them.
Right. Totally. Yeah, beautiful.
That's probably a good idea.
Sometimes it is.
I think oftentimes it's a good idea not to act on random thoughts that come in.
but there's a feelings. See, this is for me. It's the understanding of the feelings and the differences between the two, right? Because thought's thought, and one for me has always had sort of this heaviness, um, and the other one is pure creation, or being creative. I know.
Creativity.
Creativity. I was going to say another word, but then I butchered it and I sliced it in half and tried to recreate another one. But there's something that builds, and then there's something that destroys.
Mhm.
And I noticed this in a scenario that happened to me the other day with a pile of rubbish,
Hmm.
and how I made much more out of this pile of rubbish than actually it was. It was just a pile of rubbish until you know. And when I noticed, again, that key word for me, what was happening and the feelings that were being generated, I took a deep breath and I just released it. I said, no, I don't have to go that path. Mm.
Yeah.
And then it became just doing as opposed to all the other stuff that was, you know, I just took care of it. I just
Yeah.
did what I needed to do. Um,
That's such a great description of the title of this discussion, because I think so often we're very tethered to our thoughts, to the the pile of rubbish, to whatever, right? It's like that, it pulls us along. It's like being dragged along by an animal.
yeah, yeah,
And, and yeah, and real freedom. People have these ideas about freedom, like riding a motorcycle or like partying on a yacht or something like that. But real freedom is just not being dragged along by your thoughts.
love that. I love that description.
So true. Yeah. I guess the question that comes to mind for me, because I'm always trying to think of someone that's trying to get into this, right? And understand the subtleties, of like thoughts coming true. Like we have so many thoughts coming true every second, right? How do we know which one is a thought to give attention to? And how do we know what are the thoughts that we need to let go of? And how do we know which one is intuition, right? Sometimes it can be so confusing, right? So I wonder for you guys, how do you make that distinction?
The body, the body knows. I think we're so used to telling stories about whether our thoughts are true or false that we forget to ask how they feel. And I think if you take the time to ask how your thoughts feel, like your body knows when something is just an obsession or something is just a loop that you're caught in. It just feels tense. It feels unfree. It feels there's dis-ease in it. And I think that that's the important thing, is just to stop and check in with your body. And thoughts that come from the intuition, there's a sense of flow, a sense of ease and possibility. So getting to know the feel of thoughts, I think, rather than just, thinking intellectually about whether they're true or whether there's evidence for them, that's another trap we fall into.
Yeah.
I'm a loser, and I know that because here are all the things I've done wrong in my life, right? Rather than how does that thought feel,
Yeah.
So the body, yeah.
And that's such a, and for me, that has been so key, and part of my teaching is understanding feelings as the instrument gauge of your dashboard of your car, let's say, right? And when the check engine light comes on, for me, like a crappy feeling or something that's not out of balance, like like you said, it feels struggling, like like spinning wheels in mud. It's just an indicator that my wheels are spinning in mud. What do? We stop. We slow down and gently put the energy back in the wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's part of what a meditation points to, is this notion of slowing down to the speed of life, instead of thinking that there's something you have to catch up to and end up just a lot of friction, a lot of spinning.
I love that. Yeah. I would say, yeah, that's exactly how I gauge it. Like if it's charged in any way, sometimes it can be charged positively too, to me,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If it's charged in any way, has any kind of reaction in my body, um, how do I decide if it's intuition? Is by really looking at, well, what is behind the thought, right? What is this feeling or emotion mean to me, right? Versus when it's an intuitive thought, the thought itself, there's a knowing. You just know, right? And that's why I think it's so hard for people to grasp. Well, how do you know? You just know.
You
You
just
just know, right? And that's hard. That's hard to explain, and that's hard for people to grasp, especially if the tendency is to analyze and want the evidence and want to control it and want to know, well, how do you know, right? And that takes a level of trust, right, in the process, um, surrendering control, right? It takes time to develop. It takes time to be able to do that. It takes time to, you kind of have to fine tune your intuitive skills, so that they get a little bit louder, so that they're very distinct and you know exactly which one is intuitive thought or knowing, and which one is driven by your life and all the things that that charge you one way or the other, right? Whether it is you're trying to accomplish something, even if it's for the greater good, right? Or if it's just something that right? Against all odds sometimes, right? And I think those are the hardest ones to hold on to really trust that they are, right? An intuitive and like a higher self type of knowing, right? I think those thoughts really challenge us because we want to actually know and the proof, and and then we take it and we look at it compared to the evidence, and and try and make sense of it and make sure that it fits within all that we do know, right? But oftentimes it's really about knowing that it's true regardless. That makes any sense.
I love that. I love that. And I think we sell ourselves short in terms of like our ability to know what's true. There's a lot of doubt, like, how do I know if it's true? The most basic meditation instruction in the tradition that I practice and teach in is ask yourself what kind of breathing would feel good right now. When I give that instruction to beginners, breathe in a way that would feel good. Ask yourself what kind of breathing would feel good right now. Somebody always says, "How do I know? I don't know how to breathe in a way that feels good." Or they'll say like, "I can't do it. I can't find a way of breathing that feels good." Or they'll say like what like, can you tell me how to? And I always say like, who would know except you, right? And that's the thing, is like we're so distanced from having to figure things out for ourselves. It's like, let me ask somebody how to breathe. Let me read a book on how to breathe. Let me like get the clip notes on how to breathe. And so we don't develop that skill of just try it. I don't know if it doesn't feel good, try another way of breathing. Eventually you'll know. Who else but you would know how to breathe well, right?
And it's so interesting how we have an innate capacity that when you look at it, like, I'm not breathing, I'm being, right? And all of a sudden you take a yawn or you take a sigh. I didn't consciously do that. Right? So there's a lot of innate ability within us when we're in tune and realize what's going on, that you will find that way. Exactly.
Totally.
Right? And would you like to lead us in a short meditation?
Sure. What's good for you? Maybe like 5 minutes?
I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
So
Sure.
Could you shorter or longer? So whatever you want.
Yeah, because I think I would love to talk about his music too for a second, right?
No, short. You can. I just want to say you can meditate for any length of time, right? And it all is helpful, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I'll do something quick then.
Yeah.
So you might want to close your eyes unless you're feeling sleepy, and then you can open them a little bit. Keep your back straight, head facing forward, hands resting at ease. And I like to start by just taking 5 deep in and out breaths and counting these to myself softly and silently. As you breathe in and out, you'll notice your body. So you might want to just quickly notice if there are any places in your body that feel good right now. There might be some tension or tightness, but put that to the side. And just notice if maybe there's a little ease, perhaps in your hands or feet, some other part of the body. Just noticing that part of our experience is always pleasant. And when you're ready, you can bring your mind to your breath. So just put your mind on your breath at one point, probably at the nostrils or the rise and fall of the belly. But really, you can be aware of the breath anywhere in your body. Just find one place where you can notice the in-breath and the out-breath. And make up your mind that you're going to stay right there. And if your mind wanders, just bring it right back to the breath. Whenever you come back to the breath, see if you can reward yourself by giving yourself a way of breathing that feels really good. You can just ask yourself, what kind of breathing would feel really good right now? And notice how your body wants to respond. One more time, what kind of breathing would feel good right now? And then before we end the sitting, just acknowledging your effort, thanking yourself for showing up and taking even just a couple of minutes to quiet your mind, to find a way of breathing that feels good. This is really important work. And then you can take a few deep in and out breaths. Just breathe away any tension that may have gathered. And at your own pace, you can slowly start to open your eyes and come back into the room.
That was great. Thank you.
Nice to feel with you both. Yeah.
You know what I loved about this? That it was quick,
Yeah.
right? Because oftentimes I feel like that's kind of the reason why people don't meditate. I don't have time for it, right?
Yeah.
It takes, it's just, I can't sit still for that long. And it really doesn't take that much, right? And it's a starting point. You can always start there and build on to that, right? Because just by mastering those few minutes, you're teaching yourself how to do it longer, right?
Yeah.
By continuously doing it.
Mhm.
So I love this. This was really, to me, it was very relaxing. And like, I'm gonna try the focusing on the breath. Not that I didn't know about it, but I normally do the mantra to bring my, to come back, if I see that my mind is wandering a lot and I'm just really trying to be still in that moment, I let the thoughts go through for a little bit, right? And I observe them. And then eventually they kind of dissolve. But if they don't, then I start repeating the mantra. But I actually really enjoyed the focusing on my breath or like part of my body and see how it felt. I love that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There was another highlights for me, and thank you, Paul. That was really good. Is you? I don't know if you remember, and I have to watch the recording later. But you pointed to, and I'm just going to paraphrase because I can't remember the exact words he said, but pointing to the health in you.
Mm.
Like you had said something that, like notice the peace within you. Like there was something, I can't remember what you said, but it was so like yes, that's, I see, yes, I see that, I feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I said that part of our experience is always pleasant.
Yeah, and look for that. Like
Look for that. Yeah.
yeah, and that's almost an important distinction, because when we look out in the outside, we're always looking through our filter, right? And we're
Right.
always tend to look at what's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is what's going on in the medical field right now, is like they're looking at what's wrong with the system rather than looking to where where it is healthy,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
where we can build from that, right?
yeah.
And I think part of meditation is when we think we're unbroken, look to the spots where we're not broken.
Right, right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that. How do you feel about using music for meditation? Do you use music at all, like meditative sounds, or is that something you use?
Um, I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. I feel that we're trying to really connect to our inner music. Um, it's hard to connect to our inner music, and adding a layer of outer sounds kind of can be distracting. I understand that some people are very wound up and they just need something to calm them down. So I don't want to make blanket generalizations. So one thing I tell students is like maybe listen to a little music before you meditate if that helps you relax. But I think it's good to get quiet and to really tune into the silence, because that's I think really where more of the answers are than in outer music. As much as I'm a musician and I'd love to advocate for external music too, I think the silence is really where the answers are.
And and there's one thing that, like, I know in my workshops and when I coach people, I talk about deep listening.
Yeah.
And we do that when music is present,
Mhm.
right? We're not listening to judge, like we're not looking at, there's a feeling behind it.
Yeah.
And and so, I think with what I feel from the meditation and even just the short experience that you provided to us there, is that there's something behind all that noise,
Yeah. Right.
right? And that's where the essence is.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
But speaking of music, music is something that I find gets me into a meditative state
Mhm.
when I'm not necessarily sitting, trying to meditate, but maybe listening to music that feels really good in that moment. And the music that feels really good in that moment is not always the same,
Right.
right?
Right.
But
Totally.
if I need to like slow down, I know what kind of playlist to go to. I'm not a musician. I was not gifted with the talent of a musician, but like I know what fits me in that moment for the mood that I'm in, for what I want to activate in myself.
Right.
And so I connect with music very much like that. And oftentimes I really find it to be a good way to
Mm.
go within while I'm listening to something that puts me in that different state. So, not necessarily through meditation per se, but by letting music take me, right? By being in flow with the music that's
Totally.
playing. If that makes any sense.
Totally. Yeah. 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 No, music is such a beautiful way of reconnecting to ourselves. Yeah.
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 So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your music? Because I think we talked about
Oh,
it a
what a
little bit
segue.
before we came on. No, but before we came on, we talked about it, right? So, I would like to speak about it for a minute because I love, tell us what's your relationship with music and how is this like blending and fitting with the rest of you?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's the same idea of tuning in, right? And really sort of seeing what's there. And particularly as like a songwriter, but also as a performer, I'm always like trying to like hear, like listen, like what's the voice in my head saying, both in terms of the words and also the melodies. And really, w- for me, music is about tuning in before I do anything external. So I try not to write things, write words down until I've heard them first in my head. I try, so I think of it as taking dictation from a higher place.
Mm-hmm.
And the same as with melodies. I try to really listen, not like, here's what I know how to play on the guitar, but rather like, what do I really hear in the deep recesses of my mind? Um, and I find that when I can do that, I can also connect to other people, because I think that's what other people need more than just like a catchy song. They need permission to connect to themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of that deep listening that I talk about, right? And uh, and this is a great topic for a whole full show too. But one of the things I'm always fascinated by songwriters. Um, and after watching, I don't know if you watched the documentary on the Beatles, the Get Back. documentary.
A little, yeah.
I was just so fascinated how free flowing,
Right.
and how at ease they were,
Right.
in spite of the deadlines that they had, in spite of the extra so-called pressure they put themselves on to create an album in 21 days and have a live concert and all these things that a layperson would go like, how am I going to write all those songs in that
Yeah.
time, right? And just to watch how it would just sort of flow from them, right? They would have a little bit of a melody that they'd bring into the form, and and then it's like, oh, I like that, it's like, oh, like, yeah, and then it's just the creative process is just incredible to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that in yourself, and the words that you have put in your music is it comes from a deeper place.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it really connects to meditation, and also there's another piece that we haven't talked about, which is repetition. Because if you don't have to be a great musician. If you just sit at the piano and you try to play the same melody 100 times in a row, eventually you'll fall in love with that melody and you'll find something really beautiful there. It's not about technical virtuosity. It's the same thing. If you just go over and over the same words, eventually the thing that's really important will come through. So we're all just taking dictation, and I think we're so, in our culture, we're so quick to want a finished product that we don't understand the virtue of just taking time to just repetition, just practice. Practice the same thing over and over again. You will get better at it, and also its beauty will shine through if you just keep doing it.
And it's not the destination; it's the journey, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, which in different words, but that's the process, right? Yeah, incredible. Yeah. Wow.
So I wanted to ask you something else, because it's something that you mentioned you were focused on right now. In our email exchange, you were saying you were focused on like creating environments where we can grow. Yeah.
Right.
Do you want to speak to that for a minute?
Sure. That's a big topic. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I've been learning is that, in spite of like how important self-reliance is, we also can go too far in that direction. And it's important to understand that we need to be in the proper environments so that we can really thrive. So like, for example, in meditation, I think it's really important to meditate with people, and whether it's a group or a community, to have people who are on the same page as you, because you're really going against the grain of our culture. And if you're just meditating with an app, that's fine, but you're not really getting the support. You're not around people who are telling you, yeah, you're meditating. That's great. Keep going. Keep doing that. And I think also with music, we often don't have very supportive environments. We look at American Idol, or we look at whoever's famous, and we think, wow, that's incredible. But there's so much nurturing has to go into what you see, in the Grammys. And so I think more and more I've been really trying to get people to be like, it's okay if you can't do it alone. You find an environment that's really nurturing for you, whether it's creativity or spirituality. Like, let yourself be held by people and by also physical environments too, right? If you're multitasking and have a million screens up, it's going to be very hard to listen to that voice within. So that's a very quick.
I mean, it is about, community and surrounding ourselves with communities that align with what you're trying to do. Right?
Totally.
Because now you're not fighting up against it, but you're going in, you're going in towards it with somebody else who's working towards the same thing. So there's enormous power to that.
Totally.
Right. It just helps project you in that direction versus like putting on doubt and blocks and redirecting you. Because sometimes we do listen to that, right? Totally. We do listen to the narrative that goes against what we feel deep inside we want to do, because we buy into all these beliefs, we buy into the conditioning, right? We let others' opinions influence us, right? Mm-hmm. And so to be surrounded by a supportive environment, a supportive tribe, a supportive community can be the difference maker often.
100%.
Right?
100%. I mean, we're all coaches here, so I'm sure we've all had the experience. Like, someone saying like, that was amazing, why can't I do that on my own? You know, and what I always say to people is like, we all need other people.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up because you didn't do it on your own. Like, enjoy the fact that you were able to do it with me or with somebody else, you know.
And I've my analogy is that, you know, we are all connected,
Right.
right? Like we are of one source. It's our thinking that removes us from that.
Right. Yeah.
And the more we remove ourselves, you know, we wonder again, noticing how much struggle it is, how much pain there is, and right. But when we're back in touch with, right, and I think this is where coaches can really play a huge role in that, in reconnecting people,
right,
to themselves, which
right.
is that source for, you know, that flows through everything. I mean, Einstein was pointing towards that universal intelligence piece, right? You know, spruce trees, you know, they all share the same roots. And we have numerous examples of nature, right? We are nature. We forget we're nature. Yeah. So
we're just individual manifestations of it, right?
Yeah.
We buy into the ego, right? We buy into the need to have that spotlight, right? To make it on our own, right? But that too is conditioning. That too, that I have to do it all on my own. That it has to be just me. That I can do this and I need to prove it. That is conditioning. Says who? Right? Always question everything. Says who? What's the reason behind that? Right? And what happens when you do it on your own?
Right.
Versus doing it with someone else who feels the same way, who thinks the same way, who is in it for the same reasons. Isn't it a little more enjoyable to have someone alongside you? Right?
Well, exactly, right. The so I want to know if people are listening, okay? Because we have an audience out there. And who would like to hear one of Paul's songs? So
I do.
I do. I want a heart, a thumbs up, or whatever. Put it in the chat, okay? And right now.
Do it now. Say yes.
I'm gonna cue up a song, and
hopefully we won't get blocked.
Well, yeah, I guess. Well, if you're watching it live, you're
gonna hear it.
You're gonna hear it for sure. Yeah. Yes, please. Yes, please. Okay. So we're getting them. Great. Hey, Angela, good to see you on the show. And let me just share my screen now. Whoops. Okay, share system audio. Oh, good. I'm glad I saw that button. Because it would be funny that you know, Take Care of the Silence is the name of the song, and I played it in silence. Oh, not funny. Anyways, I'll be quiet right now, and we'll play your song, Paul. Okay.
Take care of the silence and it will take care of you. Speak in gentle whispers and step lightly in your shoes. When your life seems at an end and you're on your own again, you can lay down in the dark, you still have a friend. Take care of the lilies and they'll smile back in the sun. Take care of the kindness that is there in everyone. People mean more than they know, and they love more than they show. You can lay down in the dark, but you're never alone. And I'll see you in the clouds above. In disappointments I'm still thinking of, as the light of endless love pours down. Take care of your own mind and you'll find peace there still. Put joy on your doorstep and simplicity on your sill. There is nothing to pretend, there is nothing to defend. When the lights go out in the world, you still have a friend. And I'll see you in the clouds above. And disappointments I'm still thinking of, as the light of endless love pours down. There is nothing to pretend, there is nothing to defend. When the lights go out in the world, you still have a friend.
Can you hear me clap?
Thank you.
I love it. Loved it.
Whoops. Gonna play some more. It's got a whole list here. Yeah, no, we'll definitely put your YouTube channel and your links, and I understand you have the tree link, which gives you all the
Link tree.
things there, link tree or whatever it's called, right? That's beautiful, Paul.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Yeah, loved it. And he's gonna be playing live this Saturday. Can I do a little PR?
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. So if you're in, it's in the city, right? In Manhattan?
Yeah, if you're in Manhattan on Saturday night, I'm going to be playing at Rockwood Music Hall at 8:30. It's in the Lower East Side.
Yep, just please go. I may be there. Come and meet us both.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
That
good
was
stuff.
so
Very
beautiful.
good stuff.
I loved it. It gave me chills.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart, Paul.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.
Yeah, for being very present and sharing yourself, not only to us but to everybody else. And I hope it certainly resonated a lot with me, and that people do start to point themselves within, and we're here to help or find somebody, whatever. I mean, there's organizations all over the place, so you're not alone.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, to me, like Paul is the prime example of someone that can be all these different things, right? And I think we talked about this before we came on the show, right? How you don't have to just be a meditation teacher sitting on a pillow, right, meditating, because that's not how life unfolds, right? It does take action. I'm sure it took action for you to come up with a song, come up with the right notes, create the video, right? And the two things don't cancel each other, right? But one or the other is also not the answer, right? It's I think the space of power is where the balance is found between the two, right? So
and it's the wholeality, right?
Yeah.
This is your life, right? It's all the pieces. Yeah.
Exactly. You can also be a fashion designer and a coach, and a photographer and a coach.
Oh, anything.
Paramedic.
There are no
rules. Exactly.
I'm going to interview both of you about your creative practices. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. We can do it. No, maybe we can do a show in reverse.
Yeah,
be great.
Or invite us. We'll be happy to be there. You have a new fan of your music.
Well, I subscribe.
Mandy.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Let's build up
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, no, that's
I
cool.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyways, thank you. This is always the awkward moment to say goodbye, although it's only temporary, I'm sure. But for now,
We'll be back.
we'll close the broadcasts. We'll be back next week with another show and another topic. And I'm going to hit the button and we'll awkwardly smile at the camera.